Radio up. On the KIC Radio app and online at kickradio.co.uk. The voice of a new generation. This is KIC Radio.
Hello and welcome back to the South Bank podcast. I'm joined by Jacob Jones. This is episode 26 now. We're over the halfway mark for that half a century. And we are looking at Wolves away at the FA Cup winners, the Crystal Palace, who recently crowned champions after beating Man City in the final. If you hadn't heard, you're probably living under a rock. Unfortunately, I would have liked that rock to crush me yesterday, having watched this abysmal Wolves performance. It was not a very good showing from us. I personally felt it was a game that Wolves could have won on another particular day, had it not been for a combination of team selection, players gelling, and honestly, I just don't think it was good enough. Jacob, what were your initial thoughts on the game as a whole?
Yeah, I think first of all, we've got to extend our congratulations to Crystal Palace for that amazing FA Cup win. A ridiculous cup run. They only conceded in one game in their entire cup run against Millwall. Fantastic achievement for the club, their first major trophy, and it was a real party atmosphere last night at Selhurst Park, and fair enough to them. I think it's going to be an interesting episode because I wasn't quite as aggrieved by the performance as I think you were. I think a lot of it was expectation. We made a lot of changes, but a lot of me more comfortable with where we are, and more. I think I just understood why a lot of stuff was happening. I think it's quite clear to see, as we'll get into, and understand why the result ended as it did.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think on social media after the game, Wolves fans' opinions were quite split, representing both of our views, really. So I think we are giving the voice of both sides of the story here when it comes to our fan base. The opening 15 in the first half, I thought was quite a scrappy opening 15, changing possession lots, both sides trying to string together an attack to no real avail. Lots of space down the flanks for Chilwell and Munoz. As we would see later, that would prove to cost us. Wolves obviously fielding a lot of players who aren't used to playing together. Nasser Giga, his first ever start for Wolves. Rodrigo Gomez playing in the wing-back position, which, as we'll both get onto later, we both agree that that's probably not his best position for Wolves. We'd given away possession cheaply a few times, and we didn't seem able to string a pass together. Palace had two chances around the 16th minute, with Nketiah through and Bentley rushing out to stop him. There was a great chance for Chilwell, which was saved by Bentley and then cleared by Nuri. Both of which are almost foreshadowing later in the game. It finally happened as Sarabia delivery from the set piece, going in deep, onto the head of Jurgen Strand-Larsen, who puts it back across goal, and onto the head of Agbadou, who makes no mistake in finishing. There's a bit of a confusion when the goal initially goes in, as the ref takes a while to allow the goal, but he checks his watch and it is given, and Agbadou reels off in celebration. Jacob, how happy are you to see Agbadou finally get such a deserved goal in a Wolves shirt?
I was quite disappointed actually because I just wanted his goal to be a 50-yard thunder strike because he attempts so often. So when it was a bit of a scrappy little header that, hardly making its way over the line, a bit disappointing, but obviously they all count. Very much in jest there. But yeah, I think Agbadou, a goal for him on what was one of his weaker performances in the Wolves shirt. I also thought definitely missed Matt Doherty next to him. I think
I agree.
We'll get on to Nasser Giga later because, oh my word, I've got some things to say about him. But yeah, I think you mentioned against the other play, and in terms of attacking, yes, but we did have a lot of the ball early on. Just not doing much with it. I think you could tell these are players that don't play with each other week in, week out. I remember a few times the likes of Guedes trying to play a crossfield pass that maybe Semedo or an Ain't Noy would have got to, and Rodrigo's just not quite made the run early enough, not quite on the same wavelength. There's also stuff like Strand Larson being very isolated because the players don't play with him. They don't know how to play around Strand Larson. And of course, we've got to mention the massive João Gomez-sized hole where
Yeah.
we saw Bellegarde pushed into a deeper position, which just doesn't work for him, in my opinion. He isn't João Gomez. He doesn't do João Gomez's job, and it made Andre look like he's having a more missing performance when he's having to do almost two men's jobs in that absence of João. But obviously, that goes into what I said earlier. This was quite expected, and when we took the lead, I thought, you know what? Let's give this a bit of a go. And unfortunately, our lead wouldn't last too long.
Yeah, just to touch on a couple of things you said there. I do completely agree. João Gomez was the biggest miss. Andre having to do two jobs made him look very exposed. Whereas I feel, obviously, with João Gomez, they have a nice little double pivot going there, and they play a lot more fluidly. But I have to agree, players just not quite gelling. There wasn't that friction that comes with playing together week in, week out, and players not knowing how to really complement each other's strengths, yet trying to bring the best out of their own with their teammates. But like you said, the lead did not last long at all. Brilliant work on the left side from Romain Esse, who, by the way, I think is going to be some player. Showing just in Palace's cup run why he's such a special player, having signed from Millwall. Takes on about 3-4 at one point, Wolves players, and then manages to trickle the ball away with a cross to Nketiah, who makes no mistake with the finish. A great goal from Palace's perspective. However, Daniel Bentley, please realise that you can use your arms. You'll hear me say that sentence a lot in today's podcast, and I just don't think he has a strong enough hand. While Nketiah does finish emphatically to score, Dan Bentley, you really should have kept that out, in my opinion. Although some people will feel I'm being harsh for what ultimately is a great Palace goal and a great move. Jacob, I feel like you'll agree with me.
Yeah, I think, look, no one's under the illusion that Daniel Bentley's a Premier League level goalkeeper, because he's simply not. And he proved that last night. As we mentioned a lot, does he have arms? Does he know he can use these arms? Which he suddenly discovered in the 95th minute, actually making a really good save, but it's a bit too late by then. But yeah, I think nothing to be taken away from the goal. But between Jigger and Gomez on that side, they've got to be doing better than allowing Eze to run through so easily. And then Eddie Nketiah, who was looking like a real danger man, particularly in that first half last night, finishes off. He could have had Patrick by half time. Finishes off. It's a decent finish, but I think Jose Sarr saves it. It's quite central. I think he'd get down to it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not going to go as far to say Sam Johnson saves it, but Jose Sarr definitely does, I think. And, you know, suddenly it's 1-1. The party atmosphere is back in Sellers Park, despite the fact they were singing at 1 down anyway. But, yeah, the atmosphere is back up, and it just felt like oh well of a goal, didn't it? It was like, we'll fetch this out and continue playing. It was really one of them games. If you would have told me that was a pre-season friendly, I think I'd probably wouldn't have batted an eyelid to it, despite just obviously entertaining scoreline and the commentators being quite entertained. I think the game itself had a pace to it that was very much lackadaisical. Neither team really too fussed about the game. Palace still in celebration mode, although I think Glasner did a good job of maintaining a decent enough performance after obviously the celebrations that have gone on, and Vitor Pereira, a manager who his team selection might be a message to Jeff Shee, actually. I reckon obviously some poor news coming out yesterday regarding Mateus Cunha and Nelson Semedo, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Piece of news we're not happy with, and I'm sure we'll get onto later. Was this maybe a bit of a look? I can't do anything without these players in this team. This is what we've got to work with if you don't invest in the summer. And yeah, I think we'll get onto that a lot more later, won't we?
Yeah, that is definitely something we'll be looking at after the game. Lots of news circulating around the club this week regarding transfers, and it's pretty much all bad news for Wolves fans. Yeah, like you say, I think Jigger was looking very exposed in that first half, particularly. Um, Often opening up far too much space on that right hand side. Though Rodrigo as well was pushing quite high up and not necessarily tracking back at times, I thought, as much as I hate to slate the guy. Um, I think it was a combination of both of them that caused this to happen. And SA had far too much time to surge into the Wolves half. Like you said, team selection abysmally looking, but rightly so. If with all the players departing this season, this is how our team currently looks on paper. And like you say, Jeff Shee needs to take a good, hard, long look at himself in that mirror and open his wallet, because that is not something I expect to be seeing under any circumstances. And if the right additions aren't made, we could be in a very big lot of trouble next year, unfortunately. And the cracks are already starting to show in the foundation. Palace, a great goal again, to say.
Oh, unbelievable goal, his second goal. I'm a massive fan of it.
Same. Classic FIFA sweaty for those who play. Daniel Munoz does very well near the halfway line on the right hand side to flick it back over to Ismail Assar, who surges forward. And Nketiah is bursting into the box. Agbadou probably should be doing better here, but Nketiah is far quicker than him and Nasser Giga. Ismail Assar, far quicker than Totti, and a great goal. A great goal. Sarr on that right hand side, just outside the box, emphatic cross in, and Nketiah only has to sweep it home straight into that bottom left corner. No saving this one. A great finish and a great goal all round for a Palace to complete. A very, very quick turnaround, much to Wolves' dismay. Obviously, I think Wolves could have done a bit better with the defending here. The situation was created by Wolves trying to push forward and get back in the game themselves, I feel. And we just left ourselves a little bit too exposed at the flanks again, just like that first goal. And we did see some adjustments to counteract this in the second half tactically by Vitor. However, it was almost too little too late. Jacob, what were you thinking regarding this second goal, which was wonderfully worked?
I mean, if you're a neutral, wow, it's what you watch football for, isn't it? It's an absolutely brilliant move. Munoz, who is just an unbelievable footballer, so happy he's finally getting the credit he deserves. And I think
Yeah, I
a
agree.
lot of people that have watched him understand how good he is, but particularly after that cup final, I think a lot more casuals are starting to understand how good this player is. I think Palace will do very well to keep hold of him for the next few years. But yeah, I think you mentioned Agbadou. I think the one that really stood out to me here was Nasser Jigger. He's way too high, leaves Agbadou the one-on-one with Nketiah. As you mentioned, he's a lot quicker. And that's where I think the Doherty size hole comes, where obviously Doherty's not quick, but he would have complemented Agbadou there and stayed back on Nketiah. It would have probably got that cross away or made it a lot more harder for Nketiah to have such an easy finish. Whereas Jigger, oh my life, multiple times in the half, he's either too high or he's switching off. And
Mm.
I think you can see why he's probably good in the Serbian leagues. He's athletically a very good athlete, you can tell. And he probably doesn't have to be switched on in Serbia when he's not playing at this level. But at this level, he was far too switched off. And you
Mm.
can see why Vitor hasn't been selecting him. As much as people been going for him, I don't think he looked this bad in that game he started in the FA Cup. I think he was a lot more solid in performance there. But against this fast attacking Palace team, he just looked lost. I think that's why he was hooked off at half time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. He just looked very exposed against the youthful pace in this Palace team. Very young side, very quick side, which kind of counteracted it. Like you say, Doherty, he just has a far more experience, let alone in the Premier League, in his career as a whole. Obviously, coming into that centre-half role this season, he hasn't skipped a beat, really, and he's been one of our most consistent players all year. Honestly, if it wasn't for some individually brilliant seasons, he would have been in that player of the season conversation for us, in my opinion. But like you say, Nasser Giga, he lacks the game experience at this level, so I won't criticise him too harshly. However, he is also completely the one at fault here. That concentration required to play in the Premier League, he doesn't quite have yet. While I trust this will come with time, you can see why Wolves have invested in this youthful prospect. However, he's not quite there yet and looked quite off the mark. I thought this goal really took away all our momentum in that first half. We struggled to get back into things. There was a good attack where Guedes hit it well over with a deflection to give a couple of corners. And from one of those subsequent corners, a very good attempt, I thought, on the left-hand side of the box, just outside the area. Guedes smashes it in towards the near post, which whistles just past Dean Henderson's goal in his bottom right corner. I thought this was a very good attempt, but ultimately this was how Wolves ended the half. Jacob, what were your thoughts at half time?
Well, first of all, you mentioned Gonzalo Guedes a few times there. I actually thought he was one of the standout performers yesterday. I think was anything good going forward was mostly through him.
I agree.
A very comedic bicycle kick as well in the second half, keep the ball in play, which was something that I haven't seen before. But you know what, fair play, Gonzalo. I think he gets a lot of unfair critics. Gonzalo Guedes, is he the answer? No. Is he a striker? No. But when he's playing off this wing, I think he offers something that we shouldn't be rushing to get rid of this summer. I think if you can keep Gonzalo Guedes as a backup, then you keep Gonzalo Guedes. I think I'd much rather lose a Hwang or Sarabia than a Gonzalo Guedes. But yeah, moving out of this half, I thought there was positives to take out of it. I thought we were trying a lot of positive things. Like I mentioned a few times, Guedes trying to play the ball out wide, Bellegarde trying to make things happen, but it's just not quite clicking. I don't think Strand Larsen, bless him, touched the ball in his half though, which was obviously something that we need to be critical of. But with Chris Richards and Maxwell McCoy around him, they made it very difficult. Especially Chris Richards, I thought he was unbelievable in the FA Cup final and yesterday.
Yeah, completely agree.
They were an absolute brick wall at the back, and I think, yeah, mostly what I expected. Just far too open at the back. As I mentioned, missing Matt Doherty massively. Missing João Gomez in that hole, missing Semedo on that right wing back, and wow, suddenly we're back to the team we start every week, aren't we? So something's being said there. But obviously, changes made at half time. Semedo coming on for Giga. Got a few words to say about Semedo's second half performance actually as we get on with it. So, who else came on at half time? Is it João for Andre?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen the João Andre double pivot as opposed to this. Maybe take Sarabia off and move further forward. Or bring Cunha on. But I don't think Sarabia offered much in that first half.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was surprised to see Sarabia keep his place in the team come half time. When I saw that substitutions board, he was the first player I expected to be going off. Me and my brother were very disgruntled to see as such. Andre, I feel he was taken off almost like a scapegoat. He looked, like we mentioned in the first half, he looked very exposed purely because he didn't have João Gomez next to him and was having to fulfill two roles in defending that midfield. I wasn't quite sure about these changes in my personal opinion. I thought there were better choices, but I was pleased ultimately to see Nasser Giga go off because he had a torrid time, and I felt bad for him, honestly, being thrown in. Well, not even being thrown in at the deep end, if I'm honest, with how rotated this Palace side was after party time. Just wanted to touch on what you said about Chris Richards there. I thought he was honestly one of the player of the matches in the FA Cup final and in the game against us. It felt like in that cup final, every single ball that went into the City box met his head. A very underrated centre half in their back three, in my opinion, the American. And he's one you should really pay more attention to in the game if you don't already when you watch Palace, because if you watch him, he marshals the defence very well as well. Very much a leader in that back three. But the second half, despite these changes, Wolves didn't take long to get further behind. The substitutions mentioned had no chance to combine before Ben Chilwell stood over a free kick. He hadn't scored in 2 years. Wolves, what is it with you and ending goal droughts for players who haven't scored in seasons at a time? Tends to be a trend we always see for Wolves in the Premier League, and here it continues with a very, very, very poor goal, I have to say. A double deflection off the wall in this free kick off Strand Larsen and Nagbadu, and it eventually finds its way into the bottom left corner of the Wolves goal. Bentley, again, unable to get there. I feel he should have done better. I feel he should have done a lot better. However, it is also harsh to an extent to slate him after a double deflection where it would have been very hard as a goalkeeper to read the flight of the ball. But there's not much we can really complain about here. It's just pure, sheer, dumb luck for Palace, in my opinion. Jacob, I'm sure you'd agree with that analysis.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think, as you mentioned, Wolves love to end a goal drought. It always seems like if you're out of form, come and play Wolves. We'll not let Haaland score, but then go and concede to Ben Chilwell or something stupid. But yeah, Bentley, I think simply because of the pace of the ball, he and maybe a top class keeper can get around it, make the save. But
But
as you mentioned,
Bentley is not that.
yeah, the double deflection is making it a lot harder for him to read. In fairness. But I was quite disappointed because I thought we actually offered a fair bit in the second half until ultimately Eze's goal. I think we
Yeah.
actually gave it a real good go. I think this might have been, I might be mistaken, this might be after the third goal, but a really good volley from Guedes forced a really good save by Dean Henderson
Yeah.
because we were pushing. So yeah, I think I wasn't too disgruntled by the second half. I thought ultimately it was a game I didn't really care for the result. Obviously, would have loved to have won, but I'm more fussed about Sunday's result, ending the season on a high at Molineux than this game.
Yeah,
Um,
completely agree.
so yeah, double deflection goal. What can you really do? Just get your head up and get on with it. Which, to be fair, the boys did, and you can't really take much away from them for that part of the game.
Yeah, I have to agree. Wolves showing a lot more bite in the second half. Had this goal not gone in, we would have found ourselves on equal terms from the later Wolves goal in this half, which would have been a lot more interesting to watch from our perspective. I thought we were quite hard done by having that Chilwell goal go in. It sort of killed the game for us, really, without us realising at the time, and really set Palace on winning ways. Wolves had far more possession than Palace in both the first half and the second half. Although, as we saw in that cup final, that's exactly how Palace play. Reminiscent of a Nuno Wolves type performance with their surging fullbacks and pacey wingers. In the 57th minute, Bellegarde hit a cross from Sarabia well wide, and that was sort of our best chance up to that point. 60th minute, Wolves really messed up on an attack where Ait Nouri came inside from the
Oh,
right-hand side, surging forward. I really thought he should have had a striker goal from this position. However, he slides it through to Rodrigo, whose shot is immediately blocked, and then another chance by Sarabia gets blocked out for a corner. Ait Nouri in recent weeks, I know you'll agree with me on this, he's had a lot of chances to shoot and he always seems to pass. I'm not sure what's happened to his confidence in front of goal. It really seems to have faded away, in my opinion.
yeah, I think I'll give him the benefit of yesterday just for him being on the wrong side. But I suppose he's cutting in at that point and he can shoot
Yeah,
on
that
foot.
was
But yeah, I don't really know whether he thought there was too many bodies in the way yesterday for him to shoot. Um, who knows? I think with 8-0, a lot of us used to have a go at him for being not releasing the ball soon enough, and now he's releasing the ball the wrong times. So
Mm,
I think that's probably an element of his game he has to work on, even though his attacking output is so good.
yeah,
Uh, seems like, yeah, these last few weeks, whether his confidence has been shot or he's overthinking these situations in front of goal, who knows? But yeah, not going to dig him out too much for yesterday, simply for him being on the wrong side. I
yeah.
think,
No, I thought he did very well when he switched flanks. In fairness, I thought the tactical adjustments similar to what we saw at Chelsea away earlier in the season when he did the same thing. I thought it worked very well for Wolves ultimately, to put the fullbacks on opposite sides. I won't also dig him out too much. I think I'm being rather fickle if I do, but I would have liked to see him shoot from that position.
yeah, I agree.
As in recent weeks, it's seemingly been always him trying to get it onto his left foot in order to shoot beforehand. And now he has the perfect chance on his left foot. He seems to still not want to shoot. But Wolves did get a goal from the second of the corners from Sarabia's blocked attempt at goal. Strand Larson rises the highest at the near post and flicks it back into the far corner of the net. A great delivery for one, and a great header from Strand Larson. Um, got Wolves straight back into the game, 3-2. I don't think there's much to necessarily say about that one, but Wolves obviously working on set pieces in the lead up to this game. I thought they were definitely paying off. They were our best threats all night.
Yeah, obviously we had 10 corners to Palace's 0 at one point,
Yeah, ridiculous
um,
stat.
scoring off 2 of them as well. So yeah, when we got this goal, it was a bit of hope, wasn't it? We thought,
Mm,
let's push on a bit. And to be fair, we tried to. We saw the introduction of Mateus Cunha afterwards. I think I've glossed over the goal a bit there, but there wasn't much to really say. It was a head off corner, wasn't it, as you say? Um, so yeah, we saw the introduction of Mateus Cunha, Marshall Manetzi
mm.
afterwards. Did take
Um,
sorry.
just to add, Strand Larson obviously coming off due to injury, which we don't like to see. I'm hoping it's nothing more than not, because I think, like you said, we all care a lot more about that last home game of the season on Sunday, and I think it would be a massive miss to have the Norwegian out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Uh, so we've seen, and then was that when the Guedes volley was after the second goal, was it?
Yeah, it was after Wolves had a corner, which went straight into Henderson's hands. And then Cunha's block ball over the top to Aitner. He did fall to Guedes, who had a great volley saved by Dean Henderson. Keeper diving to the top left-hand corner of his goal to keep that out. I thought this was a brilliant chance, honestly, and Guedes does very well to time it, despite the ball not really expected to go to him in this. Wolves obviously, I thought, had a lot more bite when that goal went in.
Yeah.
I have no complaints with how they took the game to Palace. They really tried hard and they did well, despite obviously not having the best team on the pitch. It would have been nice to see Cunha come on to play with Strand Larson. I think Wolves would have unlocked both Cunha and Larson to a higher degree had that been the case, but we don't want to risk Strand Larson being out with a long-term injury or something at this stage in the season, because it'd just be quite gutting, really. And obviously, best wishes to him, and hope he's better for Sunday. Cunha had a corner over after Aitnuri's ball in the 82nd minute, but Wolves didn't really have any clear-cut chances except that volley as we get towards the last Palace goal. My notes, I cannot repeat. It simply says, Bentley, use your arms. WTF. Eze couldn't have scored an easier goal, but it was always in the script that he was going to score, benched or not. The man who won them the FA Cup with his goal and has had a goal contribution every game since the international break with England. Not sure what Thomas Tuchel said to him over that time, but he has been absolutely on fire. Couldn't have scored an easier goal. Agbadu charging out, losing possession in the middle of the flank. I don't really want to criticise him for this. I thought he was making the right decision. There wasn't a lot of movement going on at the time. Wolves pushing for that equaliser. He was charging up to sort of play that ball he does between the flanks to cut through straight to the attack. And however, he did lose possession, two players ganging up on him, and it left the defence very exposed. It was a 3-on-1 situation, which then became a 4-on-1 situation, 4-on-2, sorry. And there wasn't much to do at this point. When the ball reaches Eze, we all knew what was about to happen. He's cutting in from the left-hand side, and what I thought was honestly a very tame finish rolls into that far corner of the goal. Great finish from a Palace perspective again, and that hero of Selhurst Park got another goal. But I really thought Bentley should be saving this. I thought it was more of a trickle aimed at his goal at the best. Not exactly an emphatic finish like the one we saw to win them the cup. It was really just tame, and I thought Bentley should be saving it. I'm sure you'll agree with this.
Yeah, definitely. But I think at the start, I digged out Nasajiga for it. So it's only fair I dig out Nelson Semedo for it. I think
Yeah, I completely agree.
multiple times, not just this goal, where he's way too high.
Yeah.
Especially at times further forward than Nori, who is the winger.
Yeah, at times he was pressing Dean Henderson.
Yeah. Which is
why are you further over the attackers?
Ridiculous. Whether that's an instruction, I doubt it is. But yeah, leaving the defence very exposed. But then, as exposed the defence is, I think they've got to do better. I think once the support was back, it's almost like a drill you do on Sunday League where you have to jockey the player but not tackle them.
Yeah.
Support attempts to take the ball off Eze, and he just waits for the opportunity to open and just trickles it to the bottom corner. Dan Bentley, yeah, I think I would have got to this ball genuinely.
So,
Not a great finish from Eze. I think his celebration kind of reflected that. I was like, hold on, how's that just gone in? But I said to my dad, by the time you start, they're scoring here. Casual as that. And he went, yep. And they did. It was easy for us to see from a mile away.
I agree.
By the amount of, I think this is a good indicator of it, the amount of fan videos I've seen of this goal. It was easy for them to tell as well. You can just tell about this attack when it's a player like Abel Eze in such good form, such a good footballer at the best of times. You know, you can't give him that much space and expect not to get punished. And that took the wind out of our sails completely, man. And that was game over at 4-2. I think it was truly party time at Selhurst Park. It hadn't already been.
Yeah, completely agree. There was absolutely no route back into the game there for Wolves with the amount of time left on the clock. Like you say, Eze just being patient there. He's a smart footballer. He plays with his brain, not his feet. Hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, just just very simple, really. Like you said, I think someone should have been putting in a challenge there, but he also, at any time, to be fair, could have just played it out to one of the out wide options. Obviously, a 4-on-2, Wolves leaving themselves so exposed that there wasn't really a way Palace couldn't score here, except for if the shot was booted far over the goal. Obviously, Wolves, I don't really want to complain too much because I think we were making the right decision in trying to get back into the game at this point. Obviously, time running out for us to do that anyway. But like you say, party time truly commenced at Selhurst Park. And what I have to say, it was an amazing atmosphere all game. I expected no less, having them just won the FA Cup. But yeah, it was bittersweet to see. We could have been in that position 5 or 6 years ago. But let's not open that can of worms. In the 95th minute, as Athel mentioned earlier, Daniel Bentley realised he had arms and made a great save against Mateta to deny the Frenchman. Jean-Philippe was not going to be kicking the corner flag, yesterday. However, I'm sure he was raising them at full time, giving ovations to the fans, and probably an FA Cup presentation, I imagine. However, we weren't sticking around to see that. We had our fill during the final Saturday, and it really brought to the end what was a very tame performance from Wolves. I thought we had an opportunity, given obviously Palace were going to be quite hungover from their celebrations. However, not the best. I thought we were really on the beach, to be honest, throughout this whole performance, as were Crystal Palace, if I'm honest. Like you said earlier, Jacob, it was very much a pre-season game from both sides. But we mentioned earlier during the first half that this may have been a message to Jeff Shee. Well, I'm sure Jeff Shee will be getting a lot more messages this week regarding Mateus Cunha and Nelson Semedo. I think the easiest thing to talk about first is going to be Mateus Cunha, Fabrizio Romano, the kiss of death. Here we go. Mateus Cunha will be joining Manchester United, regardless of the result of tomorrow's Europa League final. Today's Europa League final. Wow. If you're listening, it may have already been the Europa League final by the time you are listening. And you may... Yeah, honestly, at this point, come on, Spurs, just because... Actually, you know what? I really couldn't care less, to be honest.
I would like Tottenham to do it, to be honest.
I'd like Tottenham to do it so Mateus just looks like a bit of a fool. But I also would rather United win just so I can carry on laughing at Tottenham for being trophyless. What is the point of Tottenham otherwise if they've won something? I'm not really too bothered. But Mateus Cunha will ultimately be joining the Red Devils. Now, personally, I'm not sure this is the best move out of the options he would have surely had. However, it is a move I can completely understand why he's making, contrary to the opinion of a lot of Wolves fans. I'm seeing a lot of unnecessary hate, in my opinion, for him. People calling him a Judas as such, people calling him a villain, people calling him some things I cannot repeat on this podcast. However, I personally, and I'm sure you feel the same, Jacob, Mateus is not any of these things. He's simply being a footballer, going to a bigger employer at the end of the day. As much as we hate to say it, the table is not representative of the global stature of us compared to Manchester United. If you are employed as, let's say, a lawyer, would you not step up from the little Wolverhampton lawyer house to go into a globally recognised firm for triple your salary in a better location? When it comes to any job, I think you'd be stupid not to, and I don't think we should be hating on Mateus Cunha for doing any different. This Manchester United are the same Manchester United who have these problems, yes, but money is not one of them when it comes to paying these players' wages. And ultimately, he will fit very well in Ruben Amorim's style of football. And even if Amorim has a nightmare next season and gets sacked halfway through, he will fit very well into any tactical system, ultimately, because he's that good of a footballer. Jacob, what are your thoughts? Because I don't expect them to be much different from mine.
Look, I think if you're looking for someone to be straight out in this deal, it's Jeff Shee. The fact of the release clause being low anyway, I believe it was 60.5 million.
Yeah,
and then
terrible.
We could potentially be accepting an instalment plan for these.
Shocking.
Are we serious? How many times have we been bitten by instalments? Neto, Jota, they were still
Jota's
paying
the worst
Jota
one.
almost 3 years later. We made no money off that deal. I don't think we made a profit in terms of initial money we got for Jota. I know it's 40 million overall, but we paid got about 18 million for him at first. Stupid deal. And now we're going to do it again. Jeff, you said December was the hardest time of your life, and you're making the same mistakes that led you to that point. You're going to have no money to reinvest from your best player leaving. to ultimately, if you're going to call Mateus a Judas, this, that, and the other, then you are, I'm going to say, stupid.
Hmm.
I think, you know, as you mentioned, it's still Manchester United, as poor as they are at the minute, and I think they're years away from being the final product for his career. He's tripling his salary. Um, they're going to more than likely not be as poor next season they are this season.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, and like you say, depending tonight, he could be playing Champions League football. Um, he's simply, if anyone thought Mateus Cunha will stay at Wolves, you are simply deluding yourself. Especially with the release clause in there. I think the moment he signed this new contract, we all knew.
Yeah.
And I still think it was a stupid idea considering he was still contracted till 2027. You could have asked for more money. I think it was more of a, um, messing the bed over he could potentially walk or another Mateus Nunes situation, but he ultimately didn't do that. And I'm seeing comparisons to Mateus Nunes online, and that is ridiculous. A
Yeah, I
player,
completely agree.
a player who stormed out, refused to train, compared to a player who ultimately, yes, he's leaving, but has proved a love for Wolves. Has proved. I know we all go on about the 5, 6 games where he wasn't playing, and still did well, and we're very proud of that. But ultimately, we would have been in such a declined position without this man this season that if you're going to sit there and ridicule him, yes, he's had his problems with the Instagram stuff, which I don't agree with. Ultimately, him moving is not a disservice to the club in any way. In fact, Mateus has done all he can to make sure he leaves on the best terms. In terms of, we heard that he said he wants this deal done before the end of the season, so we'll have time to pick out their targets and move forward in the summer. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that because of the instalment plan, it seems. But that's not his fault. This is another instance of the board, and we'll get onto it with Semedo, being negligent to the club again. And that's what frustrated me about this deal, not Mateus Cunha, not Manchester United.
Yeah, the cracks are already showing for next season, it seems, unfortunately, and it's the same old problems which never get solved. Installments and Fosun being in charge. One of those a lot more easy to solve than the other. How many deals are Wolves going to accept these installments for? I feel like it's because we pay for a lot of our players in installments. So Fosun seemed to like the idea of the money coming in at the same time it's going out. But when we need so many additions, when we need so many reinforcements, it's just not the way things can work because ultimately it's just made us decline more and more and more quality year on year. And it's only going to continue. I expect a few youthful signings and then a few washed ones, if I'm honest. I don't expect any marquee players to be brought in because I don't see us simply spending that money regardless. And it could end up being a very worrying summer despite the positivity we all seem to have going into next season before. Trust Wolves to go on a 7 game unbeaten run, yet go into next season with no momentum. Um, Nelson Semedo. Now, this is a situation I am much aggrieved for. Moving vans pictured outside the Portuguese right back's home. Obviously, the aptly named Portugal something move vans. So it looks like he's going back home. And yeah, I just think this is the one that we're letting get away. This is terrible. The 5th season in a row it's going to be our captain leaves at the end of the season. And if you include Lamina leaving in January, our 6th captain leaving in 5 seasons, what a terrible, terrible look for the club. If you're a player looking to come into Wolves, you'd think, oh, I can go for captain right off the bat. You'd be thinking, this is a club with no stability. And you wouldn't be wrong, as is shown in our transfer business, seemingly. Um, I think personally, with the amount of money Wolves will be making from sales this summer, as foreshadowed by all the transfer rumours circulating at this time, Nelson Semedo, we should be offering him a contract, giving him the pen, and saying put whatever numbers you want within reason, because he is a player who is our player of the season last year. one of our most consistent performers for year after year now. And he is most importantly the club captain. And here we are letting him walk. Wolves, how many times will it take for you to learn your lesson? Ultimately, it feels like we won't. And it'll only ever take a relegation for us to learn that lesson, if we even do then. But yeah, it looks to be a very torrid time this summer, in my opinion. And Jacob, I know you share these thoughts about Semedo.
Yeah, the Semedo situation is very disappointing for me, especially considering we heard a couple of weeks ago that Nelson's happy to stay if the contract reaches what he desires. If you're going to lose Mateus Cunha and you're going to get rid of Pablo Sarabia, your two highest earners at the club, you have no reason not to match Nelson's contract demands, which you clearly haven't, else he wouldn't be leaving. So it's one that, look, not only not earning any money off him, yeah, he's something off the wage bill, but it's like I say, the sixth captain in a row we've lost, and we wonder why we start seasons slow when you've still got a captain each season learning the role, learning how to guide a team. Not only that, they've got no one to learn off because the captain the previous season is also learning the ropes, is also learning how to guide the team. So
And it's gone.
yeah, so there's no real way of picking up that leadership without learning on the job. Unfortunately, the Premier League's at a point where you can't learn on the job. And what worries me is we're losing Mateus, we're losing Nelson, we're probably going to lose Ryan Nouri. They're three massive players to miss. First of all, I don't trust that we'll invest the money properly. Second of all,
No.
we're getting the money to invest properly. And these are players that you might not even need three players to replace. You might need 4 or 5 players to replace these players.
100%.
Particularly Mateus Cunha. I don't think you get one individual player that does the job Mateus Cunha does. So I'm really worried, in fact. And as you say, like you say, we shouldn't be worried. We've got the manager we need. We've got a good spine of a team. But that spine seems to always be ripped apart in front of us. And Fosun seems to be hitting the self-destruct button again, it feels. And what?
As usual.
Willing to what? Harvey Elliott? A position we don't need to improve on. A
For
position,
far too much money.
yeah, a player who is talented, but does he improve us as a team? Does he keep us in the league?
No,
No.
not consistent either.
He's just simply a player we're going after that homegrown, kind of trademark that we have to pass the league. But you're
I
paying
really would be
for it.
disappointed with that signing.
Yeah,
For
no,
both the money required and the player we'd be getting. He's hardly a finished product. He's hardly consistent.
Yeah.
He hardly even gets minutes. Wow, he's got a goal against PSG this year, which he was very lucky to see go in. I'm not impressed by him.
Although my only contradiction is we are saying this. We put a poll out on our Twitter yesterday as to who would like the son of Harvey Elliott, and it was a close poll, but the majority went yes. They would like to see Harvey Elliott come through the door. And obviously, this is Twitter. Despite using the Wolves hashtag, you don't know how many of these fans are Wolves fans, how many are voting. But, there are people that see the vision in Harvey Elliott. And I'm not saying he's a bad footballer. I'm simply saying he's not what we need.
I agree.
I'd be really disappointed to see money that ultimately we don't have, or we're not making, sorry, but we should be making on Mateus Cunha and Nelson Semedo, because we do have money. Let's not forget that Fosun has set about 200 million profit in a net spend in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So somewhere deep down there is money that's being sat on. As much as they
Wolves
might
are actually one of the highest profit clubs across all the top 5 leagues. We're like in the top 10. which is ridiculous for how many of our assets we've sold and then how little we've reinvested. I also think if you have the money to shell out 40 million on a player who is ultimately a rotation player at Liverpool like Harvey Elliott, then you have the money to offer Semedo a new contract, which is a much more pressing matter, instead of spending 40 million on an unfinished player in a position we don't need.
Yeah. And will Harvey Elliott's wages be much different to Semedo's or what Semedo was demanding? I highly doubt it. I reckon there'll be a similar amount.
I
But
agree.
yeah, it's not. I haven't seen a single link in terms of coming in that I'm excited by yet. I know it's very early.
Completely agree.
The mini transfer window hasn't even opened yet, which is a stupid idea anyway. I personally think if the window's open, it might as well stay open. But yeah, I think it's one that I'm really worried about. We shouldn't be worried, is the main thing. Like I say, we've got our manager, we've got our core. And, it seems like I can see it already. I can see the script where we're bottom at Christmas and then Jeff Shee suddenly, once again, for the third time in his tenure here, finds the money in January to try and keep us up. There's only so many times that formula is going to work. And let's be frank, Leeds United, as much as I don't like them, are not going to be as poor a team as what have come this year. They're going to be competitive. So that's another space in that relegation zone. Tottenham and Manchester United are not going to be as poor as they were this year. West Ham have got a fantastic team if they can just find the click with Graham Potter. You've got to invest to keep up with this league.
And then teams that are smaller than us, like Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, they're just incredibly well run, well-oiled machines. Brilliant strategy all round. They're the complete opposite of us as a club right now. They're clubs who are punching far above their weight thanks to the brilliance of the owners, where we're a club punching far below our weight because of the negligence of ours.
Why should it be different though? People obviously, as you mentioned earlier, get annoyed about Mateus Cunha. We've got to realise we're a selling club. But Brighton are a selling club. Bournemouth are a selling club, as we've seen with Dean Howson.
And they're still going from height to height to height.
But
what's the difference?
They reinvest. You can be a selling club and be successful.
Exactly.
It's not
like, when you're not one of the big six, you have to sell to comply with FFP. It's the reinvestment from the owners that needs to be criticised, not players wanting to jump ship, because that is a part of football. Look at Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is at one of the best clubs in the world in Liverpool. And he's still choosing to leave to go to Real Madrid. While, yes, it's Real Madrid, anyone would go there. Think of why Liverpool fans are so angry. I hardly think Trent's being a Judas. I think he's just having personal ambitions for what is ultimately a short career you do have as a player.
And Trent's won everything there is to win at Liverpool. Done a lot for that team.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like you said, this isn't a Liverpool podcast. But yeah, don't want to be too down on what happens, but it's looking like another summer of ultimately we're going to be going on Twitter and it's going to be just fully negative when it comes to Wolves, which it's been for quite a while now. You don't trust that this board will do anything properly. And look, if we're going to get a homegrown player in and it's going to be Harvey Elliott, I'd much rather, I don't need to play, but go get Connor Cody on a free. Just have him in the dressing room. He'll be a homegrown player. Don't play him. Just have him on a free. Just have him there. If you're going to spend money that you don't have, I'd rather you just get a free player and he's not going to be much on the wage bill. Just have him around. Have him play that, Tom King role, if you will, this year when he's just in the dressing room.
Just very disappointing all round. Part of me is tempted to bring a sign saying invest or we go down and just show it to Jeff Shee, but he'd probably look and laugh and then go into half time and just have a laugh and joke with the opposition owner. They just do not care. And I'm sure we're sick of repeating ourselves. I'm sure Wolves fans are sick of hearing the same narrative. But ultimately, if nothing changes, then nothing will change coming out our mouths either. Some harsh reminders over these last few weeks with the Wolves women's situation and the Mateus Cunha situation and transfer rumours have just reminded us just how negligent these owners are. They all seem to be more concerned about their own personal bonuses from these deals and their own personal cuts instead of putting the team a cut above. So I don't expect these issues to change, and I can expect a lot more summer rants regarding this topic online. But I don't think there's much more for us to say. Hopefully, we're coming to you next week with a much more positive result after the Brentford game. Hopefully, there's some positive rumour that comes out the woodworks, but I don't really see that happening. I hate to end this podcast on a downer, but that's ultimately what we will do. I've been your host, Cameron Gorman. I've been joined by Jacob Jones. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
The voice of a new generation. This is KIC Radio.